what we want. This is London, baby.
Our next international speaker comes all the way from the island of Jamaica. And he's also part of Jamaica National Council of Reparations. He is the son of one of the former prime ministers of Jamaica. Brother Stephen Wonder!
Blessed love, brothers and sisters. I greet you in the language of the ancient Egyptians. To remember that it was your ancestors who built the first civilizations, who created reading and writing. In fact, they did such a good job that the rest of the world needed us to build their civilization. I come here today with a message of solidarity and a message of unity. And I come here with a message to those who sit in that house that we intend to settle accounts. Today is a public holiday in Jamaica. I don't know why it's not a public holiday in this one. It's a public holiday, and because of that, as children, sometimes we forget the significance of it. I'm not here to talk to you about emancipation, because emancipation is a fraud. I'm here to talk to you today about liberation, because our ancestors were about liberating themselves. They have always and have always been in control of their own destiny. The story of emancipation is the narrative of our enemies and those who oppressed our ancestors. In fact, when we learn of emancipation in the history of Jamaica or in the history of the Caribbean, it is associated with names like Granville Sharp and William Wilberforce and other parliamentarians who found it politically to their benefit to be a part of what they call the abolitionist movement. That is not our history. Our history is a history of war, a history of struggle against the oppression that was brought against our ancestors who were trafficked across the Atlantic in the transatlantic slave trade. They tell you a story in the Caribbean that begins with your ancestors being slaves. Not being the first people to build civilizations, not the people who constructed the pyramids, who built the Sphinx, who taught the world to appreciate arts and sciences, but the history of slaves. If you know your own history, you know that the word slave was not even associated with African people. In fact, it refers to the Slavic people of Eastern Europe, not their ancestors. But yet this is the story they give us. So we become comfortable with the fact that we are descended from quote-unquote slaves. And that our history began on the plantation. And that some nice white men in the House of Parliament in Britain felt sorry for us, and so we were given emancipation. Don't believe the lies, brothers and sisters. Don't be hoodwinked, don't be bamboozled, don't be led astray. Your ancestors fought from the first days of the kidnappings and the rapes and the trafficking. We fought in Africa, if we remember, people like Queen Nzinga, King Benazir. We fought on the slave ship, if we remember, people like Sitke and Amistad and other ships that we took over. When we arrived in the ports in the west, we fought in the ports, if you remember, people like Elkos Bioho. And then we left the plantations and we fought in the hills. If you remember, people like Nana, like Kojo, like Kwao, like Akoko. If you remember, people like Jasper Yanga. If you remember, people like King Kizumbi in Brazil. This is our true story. Not a story of emancipation, but a story of liberation. We taught the world about human rights. We taught the world that it was a crime to treat your brothers as property and your sisters as property. But the war is not over. And because we were fooled by an emancipation proclamation for generations, some of us might have forgotten that we were in a war. But I told you that we're here to settle accounts. As an African people, as the people who were the victims of the worst crime ever committed against any branch of the human family, we are now the last to be exacting the justice that is due unto us. They gave the Jews reparations for a 10-year Holocaust that we sympathize with them about. But 10 years does not compare to 3 centuries. 10 years does not compare to over 300 years. In America, they gave the Japanese Americans reparations for incarcerating them during World War II. Just recently, under the Obama administration, they paid reparations to the natives of so-called America, the North American Indians, for mismanagement of their reservations that they were sentenced to for so many years while their land was stolen. Yet the crimes committed against these people pales in comparison to what their ancestors suffered through. Some of them chose death rather than to live through it. You and I are the descendants of the ones who found the courage to live on and to survive. I ask you today, as we took 3 minutes to pause in recognition of our ancestors, I ask you to search your own feelings, search your own mind, search your own heart, and understand why it is your ancestors chose to survive through the horrors that were inflicted upon them. We are the reason. Because I know if someone took me from my family, from my children, from my wife, from my parents, not knowing where I was going and not knowing the horrors that I would face, the only thought that could keep me alive is that hope of returning, that hope of reuniting, that hope of seeing my family again. This is the reason we exist today. We have a duty to our ancestors to see this war through to the end. We have a duty to those who gave us life, to fulfill those desires and hopes that they had. So today when I see young black children growing up, no matter where they are, as Peter Tosh said, no matter where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African, we have to reclaim that identity. And in the reclamation of that identity comes our responsibility to fulfill the duty and the mission that our ancestors started. Reparations is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. It is a matter of how. But it requires us to consolidate, to organize, to centralize, to bring ourselves together. I see so many groups here from amongst the Pan-African community. I see so many groups that are coming together under this cause, and I salute that. This particular city has a significant history in that war that I speak of. Forget about Wilberforce. Forget about Granville Sharp. Remember people like Olorada Equiano. Remember people like Ignacio Sancho, Komoana Kotoba, the sons of Africa. It was they who brought the petition of freeing Africans to the halls of that building across the street there. It was they who brought the song to the attention of Granville and Sharp. It is they who made it a political issue, and because of that an Emancipation Proclamation came. So I want you, in knowing that history, to play your own role. It was in London that the first Pan-African Congress was held in 1900, remember? And as part of that conference, they went to Westminster and they went to Parliament, bringing the plight of Africans globally to their attention. So So you have another duty now. This is where I'm going to leave you. Reparations requires all our efforts, just as the war on slavery did. Just as we had soldiers in the mountains and in the fields and on the ships, we also had soldiers in the plantation houses, poisoning the master sometime. We had soldiers carrying information, as in the case of Macandal and Bookman and Louverture in Haiti. We had to fight it on many fronts. And so when it comes to reparations in this country and getting their attention, I want you to remember that you have an election coming. The Windrush situation is almost the perfect storm in a teacup, because it exposes the hypocrisy. It exposes the wickedness of their attitude towards African people. After rebuilding this country after World War II, they act like they want to forget, just as much as they want us to forget that our ancestors fought a war. Malcolm X says it's the bullet or the ballot. The next time the ballot comes up, I want you in this country to make reparations an issue. I saw the speeches in Parliament about the Windrush. I saw the Prime Minister rushing to save face. Just as we are serious and outraged about that issue, let us get serious and outraged about the issue of reparation. Let every political party who expects to purge your vote know that if they're not talk about settling the accounts, if they're not talk about reparations, they're not going to get your vote. This is the city that groomed and trained a young Marcus Garvey before he founded the greatest Pan-African organization ever. And I have the honor to lead the division in Jamaica of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. As said earlier, I'm a member of the National Council on Reparation. That council came about because we made enough of a noise to get the Parliament's attention, and the government themselves created the council. It has reverberated across the Caribbean, and now you have a CARICOM Reparations Commission. And I want to take the time to honor this sister here, Sister Esther, wherever she might be right now, somewhere nearby, for the work that she and her team and others have been doing in this country. Because that is the place we're going to take the fight. And we're going to make them answer for the injustices carried out not only by their own ancestors, but being carried out by them right now today, or we wouldn't have a Windrush saga going on. If their attitudes, you know what they say, children live what they learn. And so they have learned from their ancestors. I expect you to learn from yours. The bullet or the ballot, reparations in the house. Hotep, one God, one aim, one destiny.